Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, where we celebrate the stories, wisdom, and leadership of social workers who are making a difference in our communities every single day. I have to tell you all, it feels really good to be back. It's been a little while since I've sat behind this microphone, and I couldn't think of a better conversation to return to than the one we're about to have today. Whether you're listening on your drive to work, taking a walk, or winding down after a long day of serving others, thank you for spending this time with us. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Andre Stokes. Dr. Stokes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I was really looking forward to being here with you today, and this is going to be a great conversation. Thank you.
I'm excited too. I really am. Before we dive in, Dr. Stokes, for those who may be meeting you for the first time, we'd love to hear you introduce yourself in whatever way feels most authentic. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Thank you. Again, good. Hello, everybody. Dr. Andre Stokes. I am a Buffalo native, born and raised in Buffalo, New York. Um, I've been in the field of social work, human services, and family services for about 19 years now, journeying through a lot of different types of positions within the field, going into, case management and working with folks with intellectual disabilities and addiction and mental health and so forth. Within that journey, I've been able to have the privilege of getting through a couple of different universities where I've been able to kind of elevate my education, and getting an associate's in liberal arts from Erie Community College. Was able to get my bachelor's in human and community services from Empire State University, my master's in social work from University of Buffalo, and my doctorate in education from St. John Fisher University. And I'm also a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor as well. So being able to put all of those things together has been a nice journey, and I'm happy to have been able to use those things to be here with you today.
We are too. And you know what? One of the things you didn't say that I want to make sure gets noted is, and thank you for sending me your bio earlier
Sure.
this week. But one of my favorite things that I highlighted about your bio was that Dr. Stokes' research on the mental health of Black individuals with incarcerated relatives has been reviewed and cited internationally.
Yes.
We're going to get
It
into that in just a little bit,
Okay.
but Dr. Stokes, we're going to call you by your old name, right? But then two, we want to make sure people, know that your work has been cited internationally and that you're
Yes.
not just a pretty face. You're
I
pretty
appreciate that.
brilliant as well. You're pretty
I appreciate
brilliant as well. You know what I hear, three different degrees, fourth with a credential in substance abuse and alcoholism, right?
Yes.
But right there in the middle sits social work. And so I'm
Social.
always curious, like, that's the whole reason I started the podcast. It's like, why social work? Why did you get into social work? What led you to a master's degree in social work? And you can start from the beginning, like
Sure.
all the way from childhood if you want to. Yeah.
Sure. No, I'd love to. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the journey, getting into social work. So years ago, before getting into the field of human services, I worked a lot of odd jobs, being 19, 20, early 20s and so forth. Worked a lot of odd jobs doing things like construction and just tried the restaurant thing and so forth. And I felt as though the work that I was doing in that period wasn't very meaningful. And I felt as though I had something to offer, something more to offer to a 40-hour work week. So I was able to get into an organization within Buffalo that provides services for individuals with autism and other intellectual disabilities. So I worked in that field for a little while as a direct care professional, a direct service professional. So working in the group homes and being able to work with the families and meet the families and kind of coordinate different outings and things like that. And it felt meaningful, right? It felt like I was doing something that meant something. Not saying that construction and other things don't mean anything, but this had more of a soulful feeling for me. So I had taken that experience and moved into case management, where I was able to kind of do some more things that were a little bit more administrative and kind of coordinating a lot of different services for people who had different types of needs. And I remember one day I was at a staff meeting and I realized that I wanted to do a little bit more than case management. And I had also realized that a lot of folks around me were graduating with master's degrees in social work. And I said that this might be a theme here. And I'm picking up on what's in the environment. They're doing some work that I want to do, but I don't have the skill set yet to get in there. So I was able to, after finishing the bachelor's program, I was able to get over to the University of Buffalo and join the social work program, which was a very challenging yet thoughtful experience for me as a part-time student. The curriculum was rigorous and it taught me a whole lot about myself. It taught me a whole lot about different types of services and how to provide those services and so forth. So, being able to go through a lot of different classes and see a lot of different perspectives from other students who are also in the field, but in different pockets of it, it broadened my thought process, and it has shown me how diverse social work can be as far as duties and different types of jobs and so forth. And I felt as though I was at home. Although it was challenging, I still felt as though that program was built for what I wanted to do. So going through the journey of that and successfully finishing the program, huge relief, huge relief. But I was very, very proud to call myself a master social worker once I got through that part.
Congratulations. We're so glad you chose our profession. You
Me
know
too.
what? There were so many things you just said. One of the first things, it wasn't the first, it was the third, but you said you felt like you're home. And can I tell you, I have said the exact same words.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
had changed my major, my undergrad degree. That's when they used to let you do it. I don't think they let you do it this way anymore, but I had changed my major 5 times. And
Oh,
one
okay.
of my, yeah, I don't think they let you change it that often
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
But one of my professors, she came up to me and she said, I think you'll make a good social worker. And I didn't really know what it was. But then taking that first social work class, I was like, oh, I'm at home. And so for you to
Yeah,
use
there we go.
exactly
Yep.
that same language, it's like I've not ever heard anybody say it exactly the same way that I said it, taking
Mm-hmm.
that first social work class. So I love that. But there
Yeah.
was two things that stuck out, and you respond to, because I told you before we hit, I got ADD, and so I just leaned into
It's all
it.
right.
So whatever,
It's
whatever
all right.
sticks out for you, and what I'm about to say, you can go in whatever direction. But
Sure.
I love that you said that the MSW program at the University of Buffalo was thoughtful. And
Thoughtful.
so would love to hear more about why you chose that work, because that feels very powerful to say about a program. But I also love, because I used to teach social work. I feel I'm still
Mhm.
teaching it, but I did teach it in a university setting. I feel like I'm teaching it now through this the podcast, right? But
Sure.
you said that it taught you a lot about yourself. And one of the things I used to remember loving to witness with my students, and even now through supervision, is especially with the ones who, with the 2 year program or a 3 year program, they would come in the door one way and they would leave a completely different person when they were
Oh man.
graduating.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
seeing that
Yep.
journey of having to learn about yourself through the different
Yeah.
theories and modalities and the work that you're having to do, that you're thinking is all about the client, but you're
Right.
really you're learning to do a lot of self-reflection. And so they come in, year one, class day one way, and leaving out a completely transformed person. You said it taught you a lot about yourself. So one, what you can talk about University of Buffalo having a thoughtful program, or more about that it taught you a lot about yourself, the education of the social work program.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So for me, the word thoughtful comes to mind when I think about my experience at the University of Buffalo in the social work program. Was the way the program was designed, it was thoughtful in the sense of scheduling. So as a person who was working full time during the day, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, depending on the day, the classes that I had taken started at 6 o'clock and would go from 6 to 9. So the timing was perfect. Again, little tiring because you're going from one thing to another, but it was structured in a way for folks who do work during the day can still go in the evening at the night and get the classes and do the credits and so forth. So logistically, it was thoughtful in that matter. But from the more personal perspective, I'd say the program was thoughtful because of the way the classes and the courses were delivered. There was a wide variety of different types of professors to teach those courses, which I think is needed because when you are thinking about social work, you have to embody that as well in the setup of the curriculum. So different types of professors from different communities. You had professors from the Bronx, you had professors from Connecticut, you had Black, white, Asian, male, female. You had all different types of folks. And what was also nice about that is we were able to kind of choose. So it wasn't just the Black male professor teaches this class. It was the Black male professor and the white female professor and the Jewish male professor all teach this class. So you can pick whoever you wanted to do the class with. So I thought that was pretty nice. The other thing as far as the thoughtfulness was that when we were doing the classes, there wasn't much opportunity to be wrong. So it encouraged a lot of dialogue, which was for the most part, I'd say 9 times out of 10 understood, because when you're in a social work program, you're working with folks who are geared towards listening and formulating opinions based on what they're hearing and seeing different perspectives. And I think that's an important thing to encourage that. So within the field itself, of course, we can be wrong about things, but there's more of an alignment with let's hear it out first. It's not just my opinion is the right way to do things. Let's hear everyone's opinion and then kind of work from there, because it's about listening. It's about the social work is about the social aspect. So I really think UB embodied that part within the curriculum.
I love that. I love when people get enthusiastic about talking about the university they went
Yes.
to.
Yes.
And you went to 3 different universities, and how enthusiastically you're speaking about the University of Buffalo, which I know they also have a podcast that I used to listen to religiously in my younger. That's why I got into social work podcasting, because I think social work podcasting really helped me get my clinical license. I don't say that enough, but I remember I failed my clinical license the first time, and I just ingested so many social work podcasts because it was just
Yes.
a different diversity of varied topics. And University of Buffalo, that's why I was like, why do I know that school? It was because they have an amazing podcast with all
Yeah.
different kinds of topics. And so if you haven't checked that one out, you should. But you
Okay.
went to 3 different, not just you, darling. I'm telling the audience, y'all check out University of Buffalo Social Work Podcast. Is really good. Even if it's old episodes, I still think, I don't know if they're still doing it, because that was for me when I used to listen to it 13, 14 years ago. But I think the episodes are still timely and timeless.
Right. Right.
But what made, because you went to 3 different universities, a lot of people go with their BS, not BSW or the BS to their MS, but
Mhm.
you have an associate's, your master's, and your doctorate at three different universities. I'm curious, like, how does that play into your journey as a social worker, having three different types of university experiences?
Oh, that's a great question, and I think being able to bounce around from place to place to institution was that created it allowed me an opportunity to gain and absorb more from different environments. So when we're talking about the Erie Community College and that being a 2-year school, I was able to kind of get my foundation from there. And then the bachelor's at Empire State University, that's where I really started to warm up, and I really started to cook a little bit. And I said, okay, I think this is it. This is where I want to stay. Because before the associates, I did change my major quite a few times because I was still trying to figure it out. Right? We go through that phase. It's trying to figure it out. I don't know yet. But once I really got to that bachelor's level and I figured it out, I said, okay, this might be the one. Indeed it was. So having the opportunity to go from there and then take some of the or not some, but take all of my experience from there to UB and then mix those things together, it really helped me diversify my educational skill set. It helped me to also learn that there was a whole lot of information that I don't know, and this is going to be a journey that goes until for as long as you are on this earth, because we're all still going to learn. And I think that's what moving around into different universities had taught me that we're still going to learn things. We're still a world of information that we don't know, and it's up to us to get it and apply it for the best purpose for folks in the community who need different types of services.
Absolutely, I love that. And I'm a military brat, so moving around is what
Yeah.
we do. But one of the things that I love that you said, absorb more, because with my supervision group, one of the things that we've been taught, and I've been a social worker for almost 30 years now. So old school social work, you stay at the job, you know what I mean? You just stay
Mhm.
wherever. And I've never ever been able to do that. And so
All
I
right.
get
That's all
the
right.
I really wonder why. But I get these beautiful, young social workers coming in, and they're miserable at
Mm,
whatever positions. And I give them permission, if you're not happy here, go ahead and see what else is out there. But not even just that. It is even if you are pleased with where you are at, I think it behooves you to absorb more, like what you said, when you
mhm.
go to different agencies and organizations to see how they're doing it. You can
Yep.
always come back to that agency organization if you just love it that much. But I
Mhm.
think if we get kind of stuck in this agency has been doing it 30 years the same way and it's going to do it 30 more years the same way, we can get stuck. Whereas if we allow ourselves to explore how
Yeah.
other agencies and organizations do things, that allows us to be more well-rounded with the clients that we're serving.
Mhm.
And just a second, when we talk about leadership, not even just the clients that we're serving, but our colleagues and the people we're working with
Yep.
that we're serving, because we're able to see their EMR is different or their SOP is different, or we're able to, oh, I didn't think about that because we've always done it this way. You can even just come back to the agency that you love with new knowledge and new information. So the fact that you went to got around that first time, four different universities and
Yeah.
have been able to synthesize all of that makes you more well-rounded to offer. And so let's get into that just a little bit, if you're okay with that transitioning. Why, in your doctorate is in education. Oh,
Mm,
from
yeah.
St. John Fisher University.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, talk to me. Why did you move into that?
Yeah. So when I this is one of the interesting parts of the journey. This is where I had a light bulb moment. So just taking one small step back to the memory of the graduation for the master's in social work at UB, I remember, and I remember this as plain as day. walking across the stage, having a good time, enjoying that accomplishment, but still feeling unsatisfied. I was still I was still hungry. There was still a fire inside my chest that needed to be managed. I knew that the master's degree, this is great, this is fantastic, but I want more. There's a level that goes after this for folks who are interested. And I said, I have to keep going. And it took some time to get to the point, the mental space where I would be able to actually start looking into different programs and so forth. But I knew on graduation day that this was not enough for me. I wanted to keep going. And I kind of embodied that a little bit inside. It was quiet, and there was a lot of internal dialogue into saying I need to take it a step further. I need to go all out to the wall. And I looked into St. John Fisher University, and I saw that I heard great things about it first. And I did a few info sessions, and the process with the info sessions was smooth. I was able to go out to Rochester, which is a little over an hour away from Buffalo, and I was able to kind of look at one of the cohort classes, and I even participated in one of the activities that day, and it clicked. It clicked. I said, this is it. This is where I need to be. So I had that home feeling again, because I wasn't even a student, but I was in class working, just as part of my experience before signing up for school. And it felt natural. The faculty was great. The process was smooth. Everyone was welcoming. And I knew when you know. And about a year later, I was walking into my first official day as a student on campus. 30 something years old at the time, and nervous, like I'm 10 again, going into the fourth grade for the first day of school. I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know what the curriculum is how hard it's going to be, and so forth. And so it was a little nerve wracking, but it was good. So it was a good nervousness. And I said, this is it. So I just kind of locked in. I put my seatbelt on, and I taught myself to trust the process, and we were able to get through that program.
Why education?
Well, it was more so, it's a doctorate in education in executive leadership. So the executive leadership part, that was the part that I was most interested in, because as a social worker and working boots to the ground and working directly in the community for so long, I wanted a little bit more substance in the administrative part, and being able to lead organizations and being able to lead programs and manage and supervise different types of people who are supervising different types of programs. So that gave me a lot of extra strength and understanding and what it takes to lead organizations or parts of organizations and so forth. And being able to take what I've learned through that program and apply it to the current day has been monumental for me. I see an absolute change in my thought process. I'm looking at things a little bit differently, as far as budgeting, as far as onboarding, as far as the organizational reputation, and how the organization looks in different communities and so forth. So I'm very, very grateful to have had that experience with St. John Fisher University and learning how to lead from an executive perspective.
I love that. And that's such a great segue into my next question. One of the things that I have noticed is that I know a lot of amazing social work clinicians. I mean, they doing the doggone thing, right? And then
Mhm.
because they're so good, they get promoted into leadership positions and they struggle,
Yeah.
and you're talking about
Oh,
budgets and
man. Yeah.
admin and paperwork and,
Yeah.
all of those things. And they, whether it's because they missed direct practice, or they just, you know, they just struggle.
Mhm.
for all the reasons, and we, you know who you are. We know who you are,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and they struggle. But what has been your journey in going from clinician to leadership?
Sure, sure. That journey I had a lot of those struggles in the first couple. I wouldn't even say first couple of months. I'd say within like the first year of transitioning from clinician to program director at the time. So I remember distinctively I met with my supervisor at the time um, for a regular weekly supervision session, and I came in just naturally, just started to speak about the clients in the program. John Doe is dealing with this, and we're going to help with that. Jane Doe is dealing with this, we're going to help with that. And she let me go for a minute, but she was letting me get that part out so that I could eventually realize that I'm not supposed to be talking about that part right now. That part is for the counselors. That part is for the peer advocates and so forth. So she looked at me and she said, "Okay, how's your budget looking?" I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know. She said, okay, so I'm gonna show this to you. You are in a transition period from counselor to leader. So it's great that you know what's going on with your people in the community. That's fantastic. But you have people for that. You need to start looking over here, the budget, the court relationship. How are we communicating with the judge for the family programs? What does all the ordering and the supplies look like? Who are your contact people in the community in the different organizations and so forth? So that was an eye-opening session for me, and it helped me to understand that, granted, you have experience in working directly with people for so long, but you can still have that and add to it by putting those administrative components to it. And that was like the start of me realizing that there's a bigger world within the field outside of just caring for our people.
Dr. Stokes, this is making me think about one of the realizations I had maybe a decade or so ago, where there was this gap for me in my mind with those who did the research in social work and those who did the clinical direct face to face, and that you needed the folks who did the research just as much as you needed the people who did the
Yeah.
face, and those two things go together. And so what you're saying to me is like, we need people who want to do the budget.
Right.
We're not gonna have
Yeah,
payroll, you know what I mean?
yeah.
We need people who want to talk to the board members because they're the
Mhm.
ones who help keep us accountable. You need people who um, go after the grants and things of that nature. And so uh, you, uh, those belong in social work as well. It's not separate from, it's
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
in social work as well. I'm curious, just personally for you though, like, because a lot of us go, and it's going to help us segue into your research in just a minute, but a lot of us go into the profession of social work because, and I hate hearing it, but it's the main thing I hear all the time. I want to help people. How
Mhm.
did now having to do the budget and meet with board members and all the things the administrative stuff we just talked about. How did you miss it? Did you miss the helping people, or were you able to somehow in your brain get that this is part of the helping people?
Oh, absolutely. At first, as I had to take a step back from working directly with the people and then work more directly with community partners and on the business end and so forth, I did miss it. There were a few times where I sat in some meetings and I said, I wonder how John Doe is doing right now. I wonder how Jane Doe is doing right now with the housing thing or with the CPS thing and so forth. Um, but I was able to kind of put that in the perspective of, I may not be helping directly face to face, but I'm helping directly in the sense that the program is going to keep running so that the folks who are in those roles can keep providing those services, right? So the background work I like to call it invisible social work. The administrative stuff where you're at the computer, you're in Zoom meetings, you're looking at, you're working with HR in the finance departments to do all these different things. I like to call that the part of social work that a lot of folks don't see, because that's not the part that is, I'll say, advertised, right? When we think about social work, we're thinking about being in the community directly with the people, but there's also the administrative end, there's the business end to that. And those are the things that allow the opportunities and the spaces for programs to actually work directly with the people. So I was able to reshape my perspective and say, I'm still working, I'm still doing the social work. It just looks a little different right now. And that helped me a whole lot. It took some time though, but it did help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's that even with the research piece, like research is still helping the people, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the research piece. And I love that reframe. And I'm glad that you were able to get there, because we need people like you who are excited about budgets. My sister is one of those people. Give her a budget any day. She loves a budget.
Yeah. If we can make it work, we can make it work.
Yeah,
That's the big thing.
yeah. But segue it into your research, and I'm gonna read the line. Your doctoral research focuses on the mental health of Black individuals who have incarcerated relatives. That's a very specific research topic. And so, of course, when I read that, I was like, why did you choose that research topic?
Yeah. So thank you. So the research part, that's a part that is very near and dear to me, for two reasons. So in my times in working with clients in the community within different programs at different organizations, I was able to absorb a lot of what was given to me from the perspective of community members, in particular Black men. I didn't fully notice this at the time, but thinking back, I was able to kind of put that together. One of the themes that I seen even before research was, whenever I see Black men who come into the doors to talk to somebody about whatever they were going through, whatever the challenge was, one of the most common similarities was that they had a family history of incarceration. And the other part with that was, because they had a family history of incarceration, they may not have had full awareness of the field of social work. They may not have had the full understanding of what different organizations can do for them, because the incarceration part is a big part of the overall system, a system that has a history of harming Black folks, right? So there's a mistrust that goes along with incarceration and what that looks like for someone who might need some help, but doesn't fully trust the system to help them because their experience with the system was incarceration. The other part with that is myself, also coming from a family history of incarceration, understanding what a lot of folks have gone through when they've come through the doors to talk to us. So there was a connection right there in seeing it for people who come in for help, and also being that person too, and not being able to see how I was impacted at one point, right? So when we're talking about the barriers for mental health treatment for Black folks with incarcerated relatives, there's a lot of pieces that go along with that, mainly the mistrust of the system, right? There's not knowing how to navigate. So folks may get to the point where they know they might want some help, but have no idea who to call, when to call, where to go, how to do an intake. So there's a lot of pieces that go along with that part. So I was able to identify with a lot of my previous counseling participants in a way that they didn't know, but a lot of our stories had aligned and had some similarities.
I appreciate this work. And I'm curious, what did your research teach you that has stayed with you personally, if you want to share, and in your work ever since?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So the research, it taught me a lot, and the research it's very near and dear to me, because of my professional experience and my personal experience. One of the things that I'll start with that the research has taught me is that Black men and Black women may not engage in help seeking behaviors for different reasons. So, starting off with men, there is what we know of stoicism, but stoicism to a degree where it's unhealthy. I don't need help. I'll be fine. I don't want to look weak. I have to look strong. I have to look strong for my family and everything else. If they see me breaking down, they're going to break down too. So those parts of stoicism that not only affect the man itself, but the kids, the wife, the girlfriend, the cousins, the uncles, and so forth. So a lot of men carry a lot of that stuff and no one knows about it. And many of the men within the research did not feel like they had a safe space to express themselves, because when we're talking about men and boys, men are taught to suck it up, be a man about it, don't cry, and so forth. So that sticks to a young boy, and that young boy becomes a man who still hears that when he's hurt, right? And a lot of men carry that. Moving over to the Black female perspective from the research, a lot of the refusal to engage in help seeking behaviors came from the systematic component. So let's just say Nancy. Nancy is a mother of two, has had some acute trauma, has experienced some symptoms of depression for quite some time, but she might be reluctant to seek an organization that can help her because she may be at risk of getting her kids taken away, depending on what she says to a counselor who is also a mandated reporter, right? So there's a fear of, I don't want to go see somebody because my kids might end up in the system. I might have a social worker at the house coming to check things out and so forth. So it's the men are within the study overall reported the stoicism part and keeping it together. The female overwhelmingly reported a different type of stoicism in the sense of not being involved with DSS. So there's a lot of different components that weigh one another, and I found that to be very, very interesting.
I want to ask you about the myths of social work, but before I do that, because one of the myths when you were just speaking is that social workers come in and take your kids,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's one of the things that you've heard, that becomes a belief system. But I'm not going to do
Right.
that first. We're going to hold on to, that for just a second.
Okay.
Because I want to go back up to a question that I was so curious about. I have only interviewed out of the over 100 episodes that this podcast has. I think I've only interviewed 4 men. I'm not a mathematician, but that's not a lot. And then even 2 of those men weren't even social workers.
Mm.
And then the other male who I loved, amazing social worker, but he was not a Black man.
Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
following where I'm
I'm
going?
following. I'm picking up.
So
I'm picking
you
it up.
honestly, I didn't think about that till just now, are the only Black male social worker that has been on the podcast. Now I know
Wow.
a couple others,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I need to ask them to come on. But you're the only Black male social worker. I think I hope I'm not missing anybody. And if I am, forgive me, person. But that just speaks to how few and far between. And so this is, social work is a very female-led profession.
Yeah.
It's also still, and I teach this, a very female white-led
Yes.
profession.
That is
So
true.
what has been your experience as a Black man in the profession of social work navigating this work?
Sure, sure. I'll start with going back into the social work program at the University of Buffalo. During that time, within my cohort, there were 3 Black men in the cohort. Myself, my brother Maurice, and another gentleman that I didn't know too well. Lost contact with him, but there were 3 of us, and the rest indeed were white women. And it was something that kind of stood out to me because it just made me think about what is the relationship between Black men in social work and white women in social work. Why is it overwhelmingly, why is that overwhelmingly the majority? And what role does that play in communities, right? So when we're talking about white women in social work and Black men in social work, of course, some perspectives may be different, but how does the community respond to that? And in my experiences, the community responds in a way that is somewhat outright. A lot of folks that I've worked with, and that's because I worked in predominantly communities of color, request working with Black counselors, male or female, for the most part, male or female, as long as the counselor is Black. And a lot of times, just a person of BIPOC person, Hispanic, or something along those, anything along those lines, but a person of color nonetheless. And I think it's important for Black men to be represented in the field of social work because it's something that's requested when we think about the research that was conducted and how a lot of Black folks are suffering in ways that are invisible. Part of that, part of the lack of engagement in help seeking behaviors is because when we think about counseling, we think about social work, a Black male face isn't the first thing to pop into your mind when you think about social work for most people. And I think that's an important thing to think about when we're talking about serving communities. So, and that's not to say that anyone who's not Black isn't going to be good at. So it's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is I think the communities need to understand that Black social workers, there are fewer Black social workers. So how does that look when you are finally looking to seek treatment for something? I always encourage people to ask for what you want. If you build up the motivation to go into an organization and seek some kind of service, ask, say, hey, I'd rather have a counselor from the Latino community. I'd rather have a counselor who's Black. I'd rather have a white female counselor because that's what's going to help keep me engaged in my service, right? There have been a few times in life where I myself have gone to see a counselor and did not stay because there was such a drastic difference between myself and the counselor, and I couldn't get on board, and I felt as though the counselor couldn't get on board with me either. So those are real things. Those are real things, and I've seen that in myself, in my experience, and I've seen that in a lot of the folks who have come through the doors of an organization who are looking for help.
Absolutely. And thank you for being so. Sometimes I like to tiptoe, but no, I don't. I don't even know why I said that. I don't like to do it. But
Oh,
you,
let's do it.
but you said a word, and I wanted to get because I love words. You said sometimes the response from the community is outright.
Mhm.
What do you mean by outright?
Right. So when a few years ago, when Buffalo, New York, went through the top shooting tragedy, one of the first things that the community overwhelmingly said was, we want Black counselors to come in here and provide this service. We don't want any counselors who don't look like us. We need Black and Latino and any counselor of color to come in here and do this because we can't uh we don't want to put ourselves in a position to not be understood through a time like this. So with that coming directly from the community, a lot of organizations responded accordingly and fulfilled the request of having more clinicians of color come into Buffalo's East Side and provide different types of peer services, counseling services, religious services, and so forth. So it was very outright. They were very forthcoming in explaining what they wanted during that stressful time.
I appreciate that. I have two thoughts again, my ADD
Sure.
brain. So, hold on. 'Cause one, okay, first thought is requesting to work with BIPOC people. I'm clinically licensed in 6 states. Obviously,
Okay.
Alabama, because it's one,
Mhm.
Louisiana, because I'm always in New Orleans. But then after that, I intentionally became licensed in states where there wasn't a lot of folks who looked like me. So,
Mm,
Colorado,
mm,
Idaho,
Hmm.
Arkansas. There's another one there, Florida.
Yeah.
So, and that is who my clients are in those
Hmm.
states. They are, Black women who look like me, right?
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
specifically said, I picked you because you look like me. If plus they love me,
There we
right?
go. There we go.
And I'm good at what I do. And I'm good at what I do. But then thinking that, like being intentional, because we have I don't even know what it's called. I forgot where we're going to be able to be licensed in multiple states. But I think until we have that, I forgot, I'm trying to pull the word. Until we have that, if you're choosing to be multi-state licensed, be intentional about which states you get licensed in.
Intentional. Yeah.
Be intentional about what states you get licensed in. That's the first thought. So then, because I am in New York a lot, just like I'm in New Orleans a lot, I
Yeah.
gotta look and see how to get licensed in New York. And I love New York. Social work. The New York is the birthplace of social work. But to get clinically licensed in New York, unless I went to the University of Buffalo or Stony Brook or CUNY or one of the universities up there, there's a lot of steps and obstacles. And so here you are having this request of the people that you guys are serving,
Hmm.
asking for people who look like them to be able to service them. But I'm thinking about the cost, the other people who maybe migrate to New York or just are in New York often or just want to be licensed in New York. There, it doesn't feel like it is easy to be able to have access
Right.
to people who look like them,
Hmm.
unless unless, but it just feels like a lot of obstacles, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And if I
Yeah.
didn't ask a question, but do you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So just going back to that time, the organization that I worked for at that time did a really, really good job at being intentional in bringing in counselors from communities of color. There was an initiative that was that really, really helped the community during that time, which focused on bringing in clinicians of color, helping them get licensed and helping guide them through the the paperwork process and the state process and so forth, so that they could retain clinicians of color to work in areas where they were requested. So that was something that I was very proud to see and very proud to be a part of. And I think, not I think, but I definitely know that the results were positive because again, I even as a program director at the time, I was during that time I went was back to boots on the ground because there was an emergent need. So kind of doing the administrative part, but also literally walking up and down the streets in Buffalo and providing services on the spot for folks who were interested. And kind of keeping that little bit of grit about me and being able to go into the community because those are communities that I've grown up in too at the same time. So, there's a dynamic of being a Black male counselor providing services in the community that I grew up in. That means something to me. And I'm able to kind of relate a little bit more to a lot of people who might need some help.
Absolutely. And again,
Mhm.
thank you for choosing social work because you are rare. You're one of the rare unicorns. You saw it in the program. We're seeing it here on the podcast. And thank you for speaking to your experience. And if you are still in touch with your brother Maurice, we would love to have him
Okay,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
podcast
I got him
as
on Facebook.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can call him,
So
and we graduated together.
good. So tell him we would love to hear his experience as well.
Yeah.
Going back to the specifically when with your research and when you were talking about Black females struggling to seek help because
Hmm.
of their fear of, I think you call it in New York DCYS.
DSS,
Say it again.
DSS.
DSS.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's called it's something in every state.
I know, I know. I
You
know.
know the
It's a
acronyms,
lot of
but
acronyms to try to remember. I get it. I know. I can't
Child
remember the acronym.
Protective Services is what we'll call it. But one of those reasons is because there are people who don't look like them. And so,
Mhm.
the way we were raised, where, maybe our mama would say, I'll give you something to cry about, and
Yeah.
that rough, angry voice, but she's just probably the sweetest,
Hmm.
loving, gonna do everything she can. For someone who's not used to that kind of energy, they would like, oh,
Yeah.
the
Right.
touching the
Right.
pearls energy. And then, like you said, now I have a whole case on me at Child Protective Services. And so, but that isn't the role. That's not the only role. My hat goes off to the social workers, the social workers who work there, because that is a
Right.
difficult
Oh, it is. Yeah.
job to have, and
Yeah.
it takes a special kind of person, I believe, to do that kind of work. And so, nothing but honor to them. But
Hmm.
that is just literally 1.0 tenth of what social workers do.
Hmm.
And so, the question is what is something you wish people understood about our profession that they often get wrong?
That's good. That's good. I think one of the first things that I can think of within about social work that people might get wrong is the scope, the overall scope of social work. So social work is a very large body of work that isn't just dealing with directly with families and children and so forth. There's from that perspective, of course, you have the children, you have families, you have mental health, you have addiction, you have housing, DV services, and so forth. Those are the direct services. But social work also has the macro level along with the micro level. So we're talking about state pieces, being in social work from a state perspective. What does state legislature look like? What does grants management look like? How do we formulate and create budgets? And how do we build programs after identifying what some of those needs are? So there are a lot of parts of social work that, again, I'll go back to what some people might consider to be invisible social work. There are a lot of parts of it that help the boots to the ground part actually exist. So the stuff that we may not see, that most people may not see, that's where a lot of the magic happens and allows the opportunity for people to join the field and provide services to folks in those communities. I'd also mention the you have the state part, but there's the research part too. So the research is informing the work. The research is what tells us what the needs are. The research is also what tells us how to help navigate people through those needs as well.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite parts of social work is policy.
Policy, yes.
Oh,
Policy.
yes. I love that your eyes lit up. Yes. And
Yeah, policy.
not just on a macro level, because I can't remember what year it was, but I was really into it at one point. There was like 6 to 8 social workers on Capitol Hill in DC. I don't know what the number looks like now. We know we have
Mhm.
a different type of regimen up there, but
Yeah.
regime there. But at one point, there was at least 6 to 8 social workers
Mhm.
um, working on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Uh, and so there's that macro level of
Yep.
policy impact. But also, on the micro level, know your policies within your agencies and organizations. It
Oh yeah.
blows
Oh
me
yeah.
away, Dr. Stokes, that people aren't reading their SOPs when they get the job.
Right. Right.
That's in
Yeah.
supervision. I'm like, have you read your I just can't wrap my brain around it. I don't
That's the
know,
magic right there. That's the behind the scenes
and they're
magic.
like, so I remember, and I'm saying this so lovingly, y'all. Just want to use, let's say, so lovingly, I'm saying this. They just got me sitting there reading policy. I'm like, but that's where it's at.
Right.
Read your policy manual. Take that time. Take notes.
Right.
Get your highlighter out, because the thing is, if they ask you to do something that's not within the policy, you can say the policy states. Or if you're out there with
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
client, you're able to say the policy states. Or if you're asked, because I remember one of my mentors, she used to tell me, always be on ready, and so if you're asked to go and speak to the
Yep.
board,
Yep.
you've read the policy and you're able to, speak articulately and eloquently about whatever the agency's mission and vision is, because
Mhm.
you've read the agency's policies and standards.
Yeah.
And it blows me away that 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 how minimized that piece is. And what got me, and you can speak to your experience, what got me with that, I was in the field or the profession, and I remember it was a Great Recession, 2008, 2009, Great
Yeah.
Recession.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I wrote my grant, I wrote the grants that kept my salary going. And I've written 3 grants that year. And my grant was the first grant to go. And I didn't have a job anymore. And I was like, I need to pay attention to what
Mhm.
they doing at the state level and at the federal level, because you just think that this thing will keep going and going and going, but if we don't have people who are making and maintaining policies at those levels, you could lose your job.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Do you want to
The
speak to why your eyes lit up when I
Yeah.
mentioned policy?
Yes. Yes. My eyes lit up when we mentioned policy because policy can make or break you. The policy is solid. It's concrete. It's the foundation, and understanding the policy can make and or break an organization. But from an individual perspective, it can help you keep your job or lose your job. So understanding what your policy is and what you are not able to do compared to what you are able to do in the work in the field can really really help keep you afloat and keep you employed or help you walk yourself out the door. So knowing your job outside of just what's directly in front of you is important. So what I would say is to take that policy and put that policy directly in front of you too, so that you know what's going on when someone asks you to do something, when a client asks you to do something, or a client asks you to maybe bend the rules for their benefit of whatever that looks like. You can use the policy as a shield, like Captain America's shield. Well, I can't do that because the policy states XYZ. You're covered. Some people might be a little bit upset at that, but you are covering yourself. But more importantly, you're covering the agency so that other people can continue to work in that program and receive those services. So if we're breaking the policy, then that can be bigger than just one person having some being held accountable. Now, if you're breaking a policy, now we have a microscope underneath over our program, and we can open ourselves up to some problems. So that policy part is super important.
It really is. It really is. And I love what you said. It's not just that you're protecting yourself, you're protecting the
Mhm.
agency, and then
Yeah,
all of a
yeah,
sudden it's like, who cares about the agency? But I love the additional thing that you said, so that
mhm.
other people can continue to receive the services.
Right.
That's not just because we care about the agency, because I know
Mhm.
some people might have some bitterness or resentment towards the agency
Sure,
they work
sure.
for. But do we care? We say we care about the clients. And if we say we care about the clients, not breaking policy so that that agency can continue to do the work they're doing for not just that one client, but for the other 99 clients that are receiving
Mhm.
the service, that's what we care about, right?
Right, right, yeah. That's exactly it. Keeping things running, and that's where the executive leadership part comes in too. So I'm big on
Mm.
the policy and keeping our programs running and making sure they run smoothly. So I think an example of policy making or breaking is, let's just say we have a I don't know, a supervised visitation program for some families. And a family is entitled to, per the courts, is entitled to 1 hour of visitation together. And one of the parents asked for, hey, how about an extra 20 minutes? We're all right. And you give an extra 20 minutes, but on minute number 62, something happens, right? There's something happens on site or something that is reportable. Now it's, well, maybe this wouldn't have happened if we would have stuck to policy and kept that visit to an hour, right? So now we have to look at all of the other visits and how many visits are going above their time or not reaching their time limits and so forth. So those rules are incredibly important, and we have to stick to those so that we can continue to do what we do.
Let me tell you something, Dr. Stokes. You speak my love language right now because let me go a step further with you,
All
okay?
right.
Because now we are not giving in to that family member who asked for additional 20 minutes. I'm thinking about the clinician because I'm a clinical supervisor. I get to supervise these
Yeah.
beautiful clinicians to clinical licensure. And the burnout is because
Mhm.
now it's 6 o'clock and I let them stay to 6:30, and now I'm not getting home till later to my own family, and I still have to do this. You know what I mean? And
Right,
so, to
right,
me, what I heard was, yes, that could be a reportable offense if something happened, but if you stick to policy, you get off of work when you're supposed to get off of work.
right, right. Now you can go
And we're
home.
diminishing
Right.
burnout, right? If we're
We can keep
sticking,
our
we're not
social workers.
overgiving. Yes. What did you
Hmm.
just say?
We can keep our social workers.
Yes. We can keep our social
We can keep them.
workers.
Right.
I know. I felt that. We can keep them.
Yeah, there's a
And
little bit in there.
one little last thing about this, because I'm good. The last question, and I've just so enjoyed this conversation, and we've
Same.
already
Yes.
decided that you are coming back. So we'll
I'm
have a
coming back.
part. Yes,
Yes, I'm
we'll
coming
have a
back.
part two with Dr. Stokes, and I'm
Yeah.
segueing into our last question, which is for you to leave a little bit of wisdom behind. But the wisdom I wanted that segues from policy is know your job description.
Hmm.
That's the other
Hmm.
thing that blows my mind.
Hmm. Right, right. You
They
sign.
didn't give you your job description.
Yes.
I know, I'm just incredulous. You
It's
didn't
a
get a
contract. You got to
copy
read that.
of
You
your
gotta,
job description.
you gotta read that.
You haven't read what your job, how you know what you're doing then,
Yeah.
boo? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Yeah.
not only have you not read the standard operating procedure manual, you haven't gotten a copy and read your job description.
Right. Right.
You want I like where you do it. Right. Yes. Do you want to
Right.
speak?
Yeah. 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 So that job description, that's what I like to call the basic toolkit upon onboarding. So you wanna absorb that, and honestly, you probably want to absorb that as much as you can even before you get the job. Because you need the job description to perform well in the interview. Tidbit right there. So um, that having that basic toolkit of not just the agency's policy and procedure manual, but your job description and understanding what that looks like and how you are to operate within the confines of that job description. There's always the other duties as requested. There's always that part for changes and things like that, and that's okay. That's everywhere you go. But understanding the job description is like the basic skeleton, the basic bones of what you are to do and how often you are to do it, what it's supposed to look like. Of course, things can change, things can fluctuate and be modified depending on the needs and the circumstances and so forth. But that basic toolkit is everything when you're first starting a job. And I strongly encourage people to absorb that job description and even start to absorb it before the interview so that you can demonstrate that you know what the job looks like when you're answering those questions in there.
But the Jay-Z said, I'm giving you $1 million worth of knowledge for 99.99.
For 9.99, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There you go.
That's
There it was. Know
a
the
good
job
one.
description.
That's it.
Get your agency's standard operating procedure. Sit down with it, even I don't care how boring it
Yeah.
is.
9.99.
Yes. And the
9.99.
third little bit is know your code of ethics. If you're a social worker listening to
Mm-hmm.
this, just like you want to have your
Mm-hmm.
policy and procedure manual in front of you, what supersedes all of that, social workers, is our code of ethics. And so
Yes.
know
Yes,
your
indeed.
code of ethics. So that's
Yeah.
my little nugget of wisdom.
I like
What
that.
would be yours, Dr. Stokes? And I'm gonna even ask you
Yeah.
to even maybe even tailor a little bit more tightly to perhaps, because again, rarity, unicorn, right here sitting with me,
I
black man
appreciate
in the profession of social work. There's other black men out there. Hopefully,
that.
they're listening. What nuggets or wisdom, 999 Jay-Z stuff do you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, I'd say I love everything about this, and this is something that I've been kind of leaning into in the last maybe year, maybe even year and a half or so. But one nugget that I have is to prepare to be misunderstood. Prepare to be okay with being misunderstood. And I say that in a sense of professionalism and also in life as a black male. So some people will line up and can't wait for the opportunity to misunderstand you with intention. And that's something that I had to teach myself and learn to be okay with the way that I may move within the world of social work, the way I may move in life outside of work. People are going to be intentional about misunderstanding you and don't want to misunderstand some of the decisions that you make in the field of social work. Don't want to understand some of the decisions that you make as an executive leader, and learning how to not necessarily absorb that, but be okay with it so that you could create other avenues of change to help people understand, because the overall mission is to keep things running, to keep things afloat. So, and just from the perspective of leadership, when you are misunderstood, that is okay. But it is up to the leaders themselves to help people understand eventually. It may not be there on the spot, it may not be that week, but eventually help them understand, because the overall goal is the ship, not just the oar.
I love that. There was two things, and I'm going to add an additional. Maybe you want to speak to that, and then I promise I'm going to let you go.
Sure, yeah.
Is a good leader doesn't just say do it because I'm saying so. It's
Mhm.
do it because, one, your job description, you read your policy, procedure manual,
Right.
all of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But also the second part of that do it was, and eventually I hope to teach you why we're doing it this way.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not
Yep.
just telling you to do it. If you stick with me, I hope to educate you as to why we're having to do it this way. And so that was the second thing that I heard. And the third thing I want to just add to it again, because one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping diminish burnout as much as I can, especially when we have
Yes.
a
Yes.
rare,
Yeah.
energy like yours and
Thank you.
Black male social workers, is then surround yourself with people who do understand you
Right. Right.
and do cheer you on and do root for you so that
Mhm.
you're not just feeling like have to
Mhm.
go, all the time, but
Mhm.
you have a soft space to land. So
Right.
being intentional about finding soft spaces to land,
Mhm.
um, so that you do know that that's only 1/10 of the world,
Yeah.
90% of the rest of the world. I am
Mhm.
loved and protected because black
Absolutely.
man, I need you to know you are loved and wanted by this world. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
I
Do you
appreciate
want to
that. Thank
speak
you.
to that?
Yes, absolutely. And going on, or going, just bouncing back and forth between preparing to be misunderstood as a leader, but as a black male leader, and the importance of maintaining a space of, it's okay to be misunderstood. It's okay that people might line up to misunderstand you, because you are maybe outnumbered within the field itself, or maybe your thought process is not fully absorbable because of the hive mindset that sometimes we might see in within the world. Okay, so having those spaces where we do have reprieve, we do have relief, and we do have those more cushion areas where we can kind of be able to do our work outside in different spaces, right? So we have to have a mixture. There are some things we can't escape. There's going to be people who line up to misunderstand us, right? But what we can do about that is to continue to make sure that we surround ourselves with the people who do and spend most of our time in those spaces.
I love it. It's Leo season right now. And I was just thinking about the lion. I love, have you not met me? Okay. And I'm thinking about the lion, and the lion only is on the prowl, only maybe a very, very small percentage of his life. For the most part, he's cuddled up with his cubs and his mate and his partner and his buddies and all of that. And so
True.
be
Yep.
the lion, be the lion, that's what I'm hearing. So, yeah. Oh, I have so enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, me too. This was great.
Unexpected.
No, this is exactly what I expected, because as we were communicating before we got here, it was already the vibe was already there. We passed each other's vibe check immediately. Immediately, right off the bat.
I love it. Oh, in closing, y'all, Dr. Stokes, thank you. Thank you for sharing not only your accomplishments, which are amazing, but also your heart. I appreciate your willingness to spend this time with us and to remind us that leadership isn't simply about positions, it's about people. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this conversation. If today's episode encouraged you, challenged you, or made you think a little bit differently, I'd love for you to share it with another social worker. And until next time, continue caring for yourself as faithfully as you care for everyone else. I'm Renita Ray Davis, and this has been the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you liked this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.